There was sounds that I wanted access to for myself that I couldn't buy, and some of that was vintage things, and some of that was stuff that doesn't exist yet. And even with the vintage ones, it's hard enough to find them and be in good condition. And then there's even problems, even if you can find them and they're good condition. So some of the old fuzzes are really large. Some of them don't play well with your other pedals. They need their own, they have to run off a battery or they don't have a light. So I just thought we could do something that was a nod to the classics, but that maybe brought it forward into sort of a modern age. So classic stuff, but done in a new way. Well, early on there was things like a fuzz face or a tone bender, very classic. And when I think of those, I really do. I think of Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, those 60s tones, and I wanted those in my arsenal. I wanted them as part of something I could draw upon. Maybe not all the time. I don't want to necessarily sound like them, but I think that it's like having a paintbrush with a certain color. I want that color in my palette. I want to have it there, accessible at some point. That's the very first thing that we did. It was called the Beelzebub. We changed it a little bit, but obviously the badges became quite a thing that changed the look of them. Sort of gave them a bit of a more uniform style, but this was sort of the first thing. Which is the orange one inside there. Then the More, Buzz, Bumble Buzz. We did two different versions, so there was a yellow version, limited edition, and a black one. Then we did the Swindle, the Stone Bender, which was a limited edition germanium fuzz. Then we replaced that with the Tour Bender. Then we did the Tone Druid. Then we've done the Evermore and the Sarbamba. Sure. The Evermore is a never off version of the More pedal that lets you toggle between two settings. So you can have a high-low or high and higher. And then the Sarbamba, we looked at old muff style designs and tried to improve the noise. So we got the noise 15 dB down on the input and increased the output around 5 dB. So it's very much that singing Dave Gilmour high sustain fuzz. Yeah. People that like Dinosaur Jr. and Dave Gilmour will very much appreciate that. Sure. We were talking that it has a bit. It's quieter, so it's got less noise on the input, more gain on the output, and then it's got a tone stack that Kirk designed that has a very precise nature to it. So I describe it almost like a surgeon's scalpel, where you can very precisely cut through and have it be very focused where you want it. Hopefully we're not just, whenever we do something, we're trying to improve it. And some of that will be things like, and not just improve it over what's out there, but over what should be out there. So the way we design the boards, the 4 bolts that hold the badge in are the same 4 bolts that hold the board in place. So even if somebody steps on the jack and breaks it, we can fix it. They're not going to break the circuit board. That's sort of unified through all of our designs. We have this way of mounting things so that they can't be, they're hard to break. And even if they break, as you saw earlier, I can fix them. Well, Kirk studied under a British ex-military who kind of had a feeling that there was a right way and a wrong way to do things, and that if it was worth doing, it was worth doing right. So that's what in some pedals, what you'll see is people will put the power jack on the circuit board, and somebody will step on that, and it breaks, and then they've broken the circuit board, and now it's difficult to fix, but it's also potentially like you could have hurt the circuit board beyond repairability. Might not be worth it to fix, but ours are built to be very roadworthy. So you can take them out and beat on them, and they're still going to work, and if they don't work, we can fix them for you. I don't like all music with fuzz, but I like a lot of stuff, and fuzz is, I think it's interesting. It's fuzz to me, when people say fuzz, it's like when somebody says curry. I think like curries, there's so many different curries. There's many different fuzzes. So we don't do an over-the-top fuzz that self-oscillates like a fuzz factory, but we do things that are in different fuzz camps. So something that might be really stoner rock like the Beelzebub, or something that might be classic 60s like our Tour Bender, or over the top and a little bit weird like the Bumble Buzz for Third Man. Those are very different types of fuzzes, but they're all fuzzes. And yeah, I'm always listening for that, but it's not one particular thing. I think you hear it in all sorts of different places, and I don't know, I think there's something very youthful about a fuzz pedal. There's something, the first time a kid gets a fuzz pedal and plugs in and hits it, he goes, oh, I can do something with this. And whether it's, Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones or Seven Nation Army by Jack White, there's that, it keeps getting reinvented. So I don't know if it's timeless, but it's still relevant to me. When I play, I use it, but when I listen to Neil Young, I'm a big Neil Young fan. Yeah, he sounds amazing, and there's fuzz in there. If you listen to the Edge, who I'm a huge fan of, there's fuzz in there. Mark Ribot, Jack White, all of these different people. I think they're all doing something. They're doing something different with it, but it's not even necessarily something that I just go that it's fuzz. It's just that it's good music and it happens to have fuzz. Well, some of the stuff is build. I think we're pretty unique when it comes to build quality. I think there's lots of people doing very, very good work out there, but every once in a while I see people doing things, I think, to make it small or just to make it cheaper, and we tend to not do that. And then there's also just the ways in which people understand it, and I guess how you get to that thing. So one of the ways, for instance, with the More, it to me will help you get a very good distorted sound. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand about it is that it itself doesn't distort. So it's clean through its full range. And I often use a metaphor for people to understand, which is, if you can imagine a garden hose with a very light trickle coming out of it. If you put your thumb over the end, it starts to get pressure built up at that point. And the British call tubes valves, and you kind of think of it in that way. It's like you hit this valve with enough pressure and it starts to get this very strong feel, even though you haven't actually turned up the water pressure. You've just put your thumb over it. It kind of does that, and it's a very different analogy for how to attain distortion. Whereas most stuff, you distort it, then you control it, and then you amplify it later. Whereas the More becomes the amplifier and the pedal acting together. They become symbiotic, maybe might be a little bit overzealous, but that's sort of how I think of it, is that the two of them should start to become a cohesive thing, and then you start to get this thing that's better than the sum of the parts, and you can't even tell anymore where it's coming from until you turn it off and you go, oh, it doesn't sound as good. With it off, it's not as good. Every once in a while we have an idea for something and somebody will go, what about this? And you go, oh, it already exists. I won't bother. If something already exists, there's not that much reason for us to go after it. But if I want access to something and it may exist and you go, well, it's not made very well, so maybe we can improve that element of it, or another, we can make it quieter, we can make it louder. There's a whole balancing act between how do you get to a good sound without compromise. Yeah, I think we're trying to do the products we want to see. If we could just think them and they would come into reality, it would be much easier than what we actually do, because some stuff will take a year or two or more to develop, and when somebody sees something with one knob, they think that it's maybe a very simple concept, but the more took the better part of a year to come to a final design, never mind to actually come out as a built product. It's maybe not the easiest way, but it's, at the end of it, I think we look at what we've done and go, these are as good as anything that's out there.